Welcome to Confessions with Cynthia, where we explore careers, relationships, and lifestyles of Homo sapiens.
Hello, I'm your host Cynthia, and today's special guest has a middle name called Persephone, and if you didn't know, that's the Greek goddess of the underworld. And you know what? She used to be a champion hockey player. Please welcome Margaret.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Margaret Thanos, and I am a theatre and film director based in Sydney.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Margaret. So, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into the industry?
I am very lucky to be in the industry and to be doing that full time at my age, I think. I got into the industry. I started acting when I was younger, as we all do. We all start as actors.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But then I ended up directing my first show when I was 17 and just discovered how much I love that and how much I love having a vision and creating the whole world around the show as well as the acting and performance side of it. And I haven't really looked back. I've done a lot of directing in the past little while, and I work at Belvoir full time as one of their resident artists.
Yeah. Amazing. That is so cool. So then, was this something that you wanted to do when you were little, both acting and directing at that time?
When I was younger, I think I went to my first drama class when I was 7 years old, and I came home that day and I said to my mom, I actually said to her, I was like, Mum, I'm doing this forever. And
I love that.
Yeah. And so ever since then, I really wanted to be an actor. And all the way from when I was 7 to 17, that was my full focus. I did lots and lots of shows, did screen stuff and everything. But then, once I was out of high school and discovered directing, I think that became more of my focus.
Wonderful. And it's such a dedication to the art as well. It's such a young age, and your resume just proves how much you've done during that time in school and out of school as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And tell me, was there any theatre production or film that kind of made you wow, this is something I wanted to do?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like I never quite have an answer to that. I think I did get into the arts via cinema. I feel like I'm of that generation where we watched a lot of TV and cinema growing up. Mm-hmm. And I think I had definitely actors that I was really inspired by in my sort of more actor-based phase. But in terms of theatre shows, I think Mum always says that she took me to see The Lion King when I was 5, and she says that I tried to leave the theatre because I was so scared. Oh. And I feel I think when I was 8 or something, I saw The Phantom of the Opera, and at the top of The Phantom of the Opera, the chandelier comes from the ceiling and crashes onto the stage, and I feel that is totally a moment that has stuck with me for all time as this moment where you sort of go, oh my gosh, theatre is so amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the theatre magic, like you mentioned, but also it's kind of the risk because it's not picture perfect in film. Anything can happen on stage.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. So you did mention that you studied acting when you were a child. Did you go into any acting schools outside of primary, or did you study in high school as part of your HSC?
I did quite a lot. I grew up in Melbourne, so I did a bunch of stuff at a drama academy down there for a while, and then when I came up to Sydney, I did extracurricular courses at NIDA and ATYP in particular were both big supporters of me at the time. And when I was 17 and left high school, I got cast in this big show with ATYP and Griffin at the Stables Theatre. And that sort of started my career, really. So, I did all of that. I did do HSC drama, and I did drama all the way through school as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've had lots of practice and definitely experienced a lot of different things, both on stage and off stage. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely done every single job that you can do in the theatre at one point.
Amazing. And that is so important because it builds resilience and understanding and having patience with the team especially.
Totally. I think especially for directors, we have to work with every single person that's on the team. So it's important that we understand how difficult some of their jobs are.
Yeah, definitely. And so what was it like dipping your toes into the industry after school? So you've been in some productions here and there in school, but after having that guidance in school, what was it like?
It was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I think there's a lot of stigma or like preconceived notion about how hard it is to enter our industry. And it is definitely like challenging. There's no doubt about it, especially financially, I'd say. But I do think that actually people are a lot nicer than, you know, the movies and stuff lead you to believe about the arts. I think like there's always movies where they're like, everyone's so mean to each other, but actually we have a really nice community here in Sydney, and we have a lot of support around one another, and you know, we're all trying to like do our best and make really good work and bring audiences, which is the main thing. So yeah,
I'm glad that you have a community behind you and that you had a really, really good experience as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
amazing. So it's all about networking, would you say, as well, when you're in the industry?
Absolutely. I think I try not to think about it as networking, because we are very lucky to be in an industry where we get to work with our friends all the time. But I do think it is about building connections with people, in the sense of like finding the artists and creatives that you resonate with, and finding those people that you just want to make work with and continuing to work with them. I have incredible artist friends who like we don't creatively vibe, but we're great friends, and I have amazing creative friends who I work with all the time. So I think it's about finding your people and finding kind of your group that you move through with. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's definitely all about having that open communication when seeing new actors or new directors or someone that you kind of admire, even like a teacher, and just kind of express yourself like you did before. So that kind of leads me into the next question of what kind of led you into directing from acting?
I think a couple of things. I think I was always curious about it, but I had like a pretty preconceived notion of what directing was. I think like the sort of popular culture version that we're sold of directing is like you just point and tell people where to stand and what to do. And I think like I reflect on the very first show I ever directed and think about how that was really the experience to some degree, because I don't think I knew very much about what directing was, and I didn't realize that it was so dependent on who you are as a person, and that every single director is completely different and operates completely differently, which I think is the beautiful thing about it, is that there's not really any like rules, and you can sort of shape the process as you wish, and it's all about kind of what vision you have for the work. I love talking to other directors who've directed like the same shows that I have or similar shows, and like the differences that we find in our visions for the shows and our opinions on the shows, even though we're doing exactly the same production. So that's, but I think in terms of what led me to it, it was that curiosity about what it's like to lead a team, and also I feel like I really love to lead a group of people, and it invigorates me. And I think when I was an actor, I was to some degree sort of yearning for the chance to lead a team. So yeah.
Oh, so now here you are.
Now here I am.
I love it. And like you said before, like as an actor, you have lots of different experiences, both on and off stage, and then working with different directors. So then as an actor to another actor, what would you say would be the best approach if an actor had a question about how to move their body or had a suggestion for a scene? What would you kind of encourage them to do?
This is a hard question, because I think it is dependent on who the director is. I think some directors really, really want suggestions. I'm definitely that director who's like super keen to have my actors contribute. This show that I'm working on right now is absolutely like that, where we've had lots of contributions from the actors and people sort of helping out and chipping in, which has been really amazing. But then, you know, there's other productions where you might want less of that, or other directors who just don't want any of that. So I guess my encouragement to actors, or my advice to them, would be to sort of make sure that their expectations with the director are very clear. So asking the director whether they're open to that, or whether they want that in a sort of private moment with the director, as opposed to like in front of everyone, because I think sometimes directors feel put on the spot if they sort of get asked, oh, like, are you open to feedback like in the middle of a room with everybody else around? yeah, that's my observation from having watched lots of directors direct. And
That's very good insight.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So tell us a little bit more about your production company and how you came up with the name Queen Hades Productions.
well, you gave a little bit of a clue to it earlier in this podcast when you said that my middle name is Persephone, which is the Greek goddess of the underworld. So when I was sort of deciding the name of my production company, I think I wanted it to feel like it came from me. I wanted it to very clearly have a link to feminism and women and that sort of connection, but also feel a bit kind of darker and not so like, Barbie pink vibes. Queen Hades is sort of my way of saying Persephone without having a difficult to pronounce name in the title, because I think I sometimes was worried that people would read Persephone and go, oh, that's really hard to say. So yeah, we went with Queen Hades, and that's how we came up with the name.
I love it. It's very striking and something that is easy to remember as well. So
Yeah,
good
that's
choice.
good. Thank you.
Great choice. You're listening to Confessions with Cynthia. You have an upcoming production called Not Now, Not Ever, a Parliament of Women, showing at the Belvoir's Downstairs Theatre in March this month as part of the 25A 2024 season. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So Not Now, Not Ever, a Parliament of Women is my adaptation, or I guess I would probably call it more of a rewrite now, of A Parliament of Women by Aristophanes, who was an ancient Greek playwright. And yeah, it's a very silly, balls-to-the-wall comedy about a young woman called Prax who wants to run for Prime Minister of Australia and is put in a position where she gets convinced by the goddess Athena to dress up as a man and run as if she's a man, even though she's not. And yeah, it's very much about our political moment right now, and it's very silly and fun.
I love it. You're bringing a bit of ancient history into the modern world, and it's
Yes.
also a piece of you, which is great.
Absolutely.
And because it was written around 391 BC, what was the challenges that you had kind of adapting such a historical play into today's society?
Yeah, I think it's been a big challenge. I think the original play is very challenging to read, and it's very challenging to put on. So I kind of ended up rewriting the entire thing, which I didn't intend to do when I first started out. I think I intended to use a lot of the original text originally, and then it just became apparent that the concepts and the ideas were what interested me in the play. I think that play is a blueprint for socialism, even though it's written, as you say, in 391 BC. I think it is a fantastic and very pointed take on the role that women were playing in that society, and somehow that feels deeply relevant today, even though, of course, feminism has progressed and women have many more rights now than they did in ancient Greece. I still feel like the concept of women being able to have a voice in parliament requires them to dress up as a man felt like a relevant topic. When we were in lockdown, I did a lot of work around safety in parliament with Plan International, which is an organisation that specialises in equal rights for women and girls all over the world. But we did a lot of work on safety in Parliament, and I think that's probably partly where this text has come from, is my constant thinking about how it's possible that we have sort of a governmental system that is quite literally not safe to work in for more than 50% of the Australian population.
And it's such an important topic to touch on. And the title actually sounds quite familiar.
Yes.
It's got something to do with a certain prime minister. Tell me a bit about that.
It does. I think I partly felt like it was hilarious to call a show Not Now, Not Ever, a Parliament of Women, because it's absolutely true. We will never see a day where the parliament is made up of only women, despite the fact that for many, many, many years, the parliament was always made up of only men. And I think that's part of the reason that I named it that. The other reason, I suppose, is because it feels right when talking about women in parliament to acknowledge the contribution of Julia Gillard. I think regardless of whatever people think of her leadership style or the way that she came into power, I think that she did tread the boards and pave the way, I suppose, for future women to sort of stand on her shoulders, which we haven't yet been able to see, which is quite sad, but hopefully we will. And so it's sort of like, I suppose, a tribute to her, and Julia, or the essence of Julia, I should say, does definitely make an appearance in the show. So
I am very excited to see that, and I'm sure she'd be very flattered to, have a little bit of an honourable mention in the play.
Yeah, absolutely. She deserves it.
And I can't believe it's been like 10 years since that misogyny speech, and we still are yet to see another strong female prime minister, but hopefully in the works in the near future, right?
Let's hope so, yes.
So, how's the process bringing the play to life?
Yeah, I think every process is incredibly different. I feel like for the past few years I've been working on pre-established texts that I hadn't written, and so that's a very different process to what this one has been. This one's definitely been a big new challenge for me because I had never written and directed, let alone in the space of like 2.5 months before. And so that's been a really amazing learning experience, just in terms of like how my directing process has changed as a result of the nature of like the work, I suppose. And particularly with comedy, I've got 9 amazing comedic performers in the show. Each one of them has this incredible comedic sensibility. And so discovering a lot with them on the floor that then made it into the final text has been a really fantastic way of working, actually, but also full of, sort of new challenges, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I love that you have like a gender bending queer cast as well.
Yes.
It was at the forefront of when you created this play, you saw all these women just coming together and just having a great time doing this comedy.
Absolutely. In my original pitch, I pitched to only have like one cisgendered man in the show. And actually we've done that in the sense of like, we do have 3 male identifying actors in the show, but 2 of them play women. Mm-hmm. And that's really exciting, I think, because I sort of tried to cast like the most masculine dudes that I knew to try and like, sort of break down this idea of gender. We've got the gods, we've got Athena, Zeus, and Hermes, and Athena and Zeus are both gender bent in the show. Mm-hmm. So Richard Hillier plays Athena, and Rachel Colquhoun-Fairweather plays Zeus. And there's lots of beautiful drag makeup, and there's also a lip sync battle in the show, which is pretty exciting for anyone who's a RuPaul's Drag Race or general drag fan.
I can hear the fans screaming right now from the stands. I love it. And you know what? It's like been ongoing, that gender bending roles, like Shakespeare's time. A lot of men played female characters, and it was the norm. So what's it to say that a woman can't play a man, right?
Absolutely. And Emma O'Sullivan, who plays our wonderful lead Prax, who is the one running for Prime Minister, and who plays what ultimately she gets renamed to Manfred Manuel Mandela Manchester in the show. And it's a really fantastic performance that Emma gives, because she has such a great like softness about her when she's Prax, and then when she sort of has to embody this manliness and this masculinity in order to run for parliament, it's very tragic. I find actually the show, despite being utterly hilarious, is very tragic, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like the nuances between the characters and the relationships they have with themselves and with other people.
Yeah, and I think it's sad to watch someone who's so like wide-eyed and, believes in a positive future sort of be crushed by politics. But that's kind of what politics does. So.
Oh gosh, prepare to have your hearts broken, folks. Now, I also understand that you're an activist with a particular focus on gender equality and climate awareness. How do you go about expressing your values in your creative work?
Well, I think I'm really excited about this particular production because it feels like the most clear I've been in terms of my values on the stage. I'm really trying to I love political satire as a genre, and I'm really trying to make more work that does feel like it aligns with the activism work that I do. And Queen Hades, when I started it, I imagined it as an arts activism company that was sort of not just making any random work, but was making work that felt like it was trying to say something about the world and trying to progress some sort of issue, which lots of practitioners and artists always trying to do. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people make art, actually. But Queen Haiti sort of always felt like specifically it was trying to do that in Sydney. And I'm really proud of this work because it feels like the clearest example of like my own values being put into a work.
It's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
It's okay.
And do you feel like there is more work that needs to be done in terms of gender equality in the entertainment industry today?
Yes, it's funny. I feel like I've been thinking a lot about it today, actually. I think I've been very fortunate as like a young female director coming into the industry. I think I've had a lot of really wonderful mentors who have helped me along the way, and that's been really amazing. That being said, I do think it's very challenging. Just still some of the power dynamics that exist. I think obviously like the movements like Me Too happened quite some time ago now, but I think that I would definitely say that there's still massive issues with power and intimacy, and I think the institutions that make up the big arts sector are really genuinely like a lot more, I suppose, because they're under more scrutiny. They are working quite hard to make amends and fix things. But I do think that we have an enormous independent sector in Sydney that is like flourishing and thriving and doing really amazing things, but that also doesn't have enough regulation. And I think a lot about that when I think about my experiences as a young actress in particular were very challenging, I think, because there just wasn't the infrastructure to support and protect me or some of the other young women who I have come up with, and even, not just young women, like young people in general. But I think that there is definitely work to be done there in terms of gender equality, and there's work to be done in terms of like class disparity as well. I think the arts has a really big problem with I think inevitably in order to get into the arts you have to do a lot of work for free, and that obviously bars a lot of people from persisting with the career path because working for free is not possible for most people. And I think that is something that we as an industry really need to look at and keep looking at. And even though it's uncomfortable for us to sort of acknowledge that a lot of the people who sit in positions like full-time positions and positions of power did have a certain level of privilege that allowed them to work for free for a really long time before they were in those positions.
That really resonates with me because I'm only a little bit older than you, I hope. But I did feel like that as also a young actress working in the industry, working for free as well. And while it's a lot of fun, it can be detrimental to people's mental health, whether it's about self-worth in the industry, when you might get paid for a particular level of acting, especially when you studied so hard and paid for all of those acting courses, absolutely. But also, sometimes it's just not reasonable to keep working without pay.
Completely. And, I think there's a lot of people who just can't even remotely consider it. I feel like I've been very fortunate to have a family that really supported my career in the sense of like they weren't trying to stop me from doing it, and that matters. And all of those factors like cultural stigma that exists, those sorts of things, I think, often we don't take into account when we're sort of like just plodding along with what is a very challenging career regardless of privilege and opportunity. But I think that in order to make the industry more broad and diverse and to allow it to thrive more and to bring more people into it, it's definitely required that we think about all of the factors that are leading to people being like welcomed in or pushed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are the things that we can do to kind of create that positive change for the future now?
I think, and I've thought about this a lot as a result of working on Not Now, Not Ever, because I have a cast that's just, they're all like just one generation above me, I think. And we had this really interesting discussion about the ending of the show. And I won't spoil the ending, but there was sort of a question about whether the ending should be optimistic or pessimistic. And I, being the sort of activism person that I am, very strongly felt that the show should have an optimistic ending. And we asked the cast, we said to them, do you actually believe that people can change the world? And every single one of them said, we don't think that one person can change the world. And I super disagree with that. And I think that the biggest activator in creating change is actually believing that it's possible. And I know that sounds like clap your hands if you believe in fairies kind of stuff, and like if you believe it will happen. And I don't think that's true. But I do think that I feel quite sad that a lot of young people and millennials do feel like everything sucks and that we can't change things and that we don't have the power to change things. And I think my biggest like qualm with that is that, well, we're definitely not going to if we don't believe that it's possible. And so I think that right now my big mission is like trying to encourage those around me to believe that like actually amazing things are possible, but that yes, they take a lot of work, as opposed to sort of the pessimistic view that I do see a lot of young people, like when I was at university and stuff, I did see a lot of young people sort of taking up this relatively nihilistic view of the future, which I do understand because of climate anxiety. Like I have huge climate anxiety. I have really bad artificial intelligence anxiety, and AI does make an appearance in Not Now, Not Ever, a Parliament of Women. But I think that on the whole, humans are an incredibly resilient species, and we as a society can be incredibly innovative, but it does actually require people who have passion for innovation.
And as they say, it all starts with you.
Yes, exactly. And I think small steps, change is in the small steps. It's in the sort of tiny little nudges, not the huge movements actually, even though the huge movements are important, but they kind of always, I believe, start out of like very small things. Yeah,
definitely. And it's being persistent and consistent in that consistency.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And is there a mantra or practice that helps you get into the zone before coming into the space for rehearsals?
That's a really good question. I have a few. I think I'm pretty woo-woo like that. But I like have a list of like affirmations that I say to myself every day, because I feel like part of the I mean, I know that like on TikTok and stuff and Instagram lately there's been all of that like be delusional stuff, but I do feel like there's actually some truth to that. Like I do think that particularly for this industry, remaining positive and positive thinking is like a really important part of being an artist, because I think that it can be quite a challenging and crushing experience at times, and so remaining positive is really important. So I have like a list of affirmations that every morning I say to myself in the mirror, and then also I really like focus in on like my intentions for the day. I think that directors, I'm not a massive planner in terms of like I don't sit there and plan out like the show beat for beat or word for word or exactly how that actor's going to move, but I do feel like I plan immensely like exactly the goals that I want to hit every day. And I listen to a lot of music. I think I'm like a real music listener. I create a playlist for every single show that I work on, and I think that helps me to like sit in the world of the play a little bit better.
Wonderful. It's like your personal superpower toolkit that you have for yourself.
Totally. Well, you need it. I think every single artist has a different version of that, but it's important because it's a job just like any other, you know, it's exactly like going to any 9 to 5. Like you need to be in the right mindset in order to be productive.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. It's the mindset. That's 100%, and it's all you for sure.
Totally.
And what's your favorite thing about being a director?
My favorite thing about being a director is getting to bring together a group of people who create something amazing. I think my greatest skill as a director is that I can identify I can identify people's talents and use them to the best of my ability and make use of their gifts. And I think that's my favorite thing about it, is that it's not really about me in the sense of, you know, this is my vision, but it is about sort of bringing out the best in other people. And I think that it doesn't always work. I don't always bring out the best in other people. And I think one of the things I'm learning about being a director is that you're not always going to bring out the best in other people. Sometimes, you know, you're going to clash with actors, you're going to find difficulties, and that's really challenging. But that on the whole, the moments where you do sort of go, oh my gosh, I like totally just changed the way that performer performs, and they're going to carry that for the rest of their lives. Or I just made this amazing show that, you know, people are going to like think about forever, is really amazing.
I love it. You love making people shine and creating those memorable moments.
Definitely. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And finally, what would you like your audience to take away from this play?
I think I'd like for them to take away that. I think what they take away is definitely going to be subjective for a play like this. It's utterly hilarious. Prax's sidekick is a goat called Gora, played by the wonderful Lib Campbell, who like she wears tap dancing shoes and you know, has like milk that comes out. It's amazing. It's silly. But I think that I just want people to walk away reminded and thinking about the conversations that we were having a couple of years ago about safety and women in Parliament, and the fact that it's really wrong that we have never elected a female Prime Minister. And I think that's something that, because I think I posted that on the Queen Hades Instagram, saying like, we've never elected a female Prime Minister before, in like a meme or something. And we had like these comments being like, what about Julia Gillard? And it's like, I'm not taking away from what Julia Gillard did, but the people of Australia never ever elected Julia Gillard. And what happened in that situation was similar to what happened with like Scott Morrison coming in. And that's a really important distinction when you're thinking about the first female Prime Minister. And I think it speaks to where Australia as a nation is, that like the idea of us electing a female Prime Minister is still too far away for us. And, you know, my whole family is in politics, comes from politics. I grew up around politics. And so I think that it feels quite apparent to me that the major parties in particular, who obviously have the capacity to put people into power, choose at every moment to not put a woman as their leader or leader of the opposition, because they know that they're not going to win. And that is what makes me sad.
Not Now, Not Ever, A Parliament of Women will be showing at the Belvoir Street Theatre from the 12th of March till the 31st of March. Make sure to purchase your tickets to avoid missing out. Thank you again, Margaret, for joining us today and sharing part of your story with us. If you'd like to find out more about Margaret and 258 Belvoir, you can follow them on Instagram at 25_A. The links will be in the description. Well, this wraps up our episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!